All right, welcome back to Problem Solver Politics. We're going to continue today analyzing the platform of Andrew Yang, presidential candidate for 2020. And I got to be honest with you, if you're a Yang ganger who's tuning in just to be fed red meat about how great Andrew Yang is, maybe this podcast, or this episode at least, is not for you. Because we're going to go over one of his platform ideas that we actually both mutually agree is a bad idea. Andrew Yang has suggested lowering the voting age to 16. And honestly, this is kind of a little bit bizarre for me to read coming from Andrew Yang because so much of his stuff has been so well researched and well thought out, and I thought has been so smart and data driven. Yet this really just seems emotional and seems very boilerplate, pandering to the DNC. And I got to be honest with you, what I really like about Andrew Yang and why this seems bizarre and a little out of place is because I fear sellouts. I dislike sellouts. And I've been attracted to Andrew Yang, and we've been podcasting about Andrew Yang so heavily because up until now, he's been anti-sellout. He's stood up to some of the bad ideas of the Democrat Party and the Republican Party as well, and just said, hey, no, here's the data, here's the facts, here's the science, we need to prepare. This is different. And I want a presidential candidate that's going to stand up to the mob, not make the mob bigger, okay, or to pander to it. So just like teachers grade papers, I've graded and written notes upon this platform item, and we're just going to go right through it. Brief from Andrew Yang. I'm just going to read it right here. While the 2018 midterm election saw the highest turnout in a non-presidential year since 1914, that turnout was still less than 50%, which is true. But that's good. I mean, that's good. Correct me if I'm wrong, Cody, but if the operating functional idea that most Democrats have right now is that Donald Trump is just a Russian agent and the people that support him are a bunch of evil, hateful, Islamophobic, homophobic, racist, bigoted, all of the above people, yet he convinced 50% of the country to vote for him, do you really think it's a bad thing when 50% aren't showing up? I mean, if you really think all of Donald Trump's supporters are a bunch of racist bigots and that 50% of the country supported Donald Trump, then there's your proof that your theory about 50% voter turnout as being a bad thing is just already functionally incorrect.
Well, I mean, in fairness to Andrew Yang, he never said any of that stuff.
Well, no, he says right here, look, presidential election turnout hovers.
He never talked about Donald Trump's voters and
oh, yeah, no, but I'm just saying he's a Democrat,
like,
and that's the Democratic dogma right now.
I mean, we just said he's interesting as a Democrat because he isn't a dogmatic, identitarian. Okay. Everything is with the party. He's pretty open and willing. So I would just say he specifically, we can argue over whether it's good or bad voter turnout to be at a certain level, but Andrew Yang never said anything.
You're right. I went down a rabbit hole. I apologize. I digress. Let me just finish reading what Andrew Yang said. While the 2018 midterm election saw the highest turnout in a non-presidential year since 1914, which is true, that turnout was still under 50%. Presidential election turnout hovers between 50 and 65%. This is low. That's a good thing. While reforms making it easier to vote should be implemented as well, we can also increase civic engagement and regular voting by lowering the voting age. No, civic engagement is more than just voting, and it's not just voting either. He continues, studies show that allowing younger people to vote has positive impacts on overall voting habits, period. Yeah, for socialists and populists. And we actually have historical evidence of this. Adolf Hitler specifically lowered the voting age to win his election because when you X out all the Jewish votes and you make fun of the Jews and you slander them, as Democrats slander people on the right, you all of a sudden have a bunch of invalid votes that have to be compensated by a youth that you can easily sway through propaganda. Okay? We'll get into that later. Localities, he continues, localities that have lowered the voting age have seen an increase in voter turnout across all age groups. Other studies have shown that delaying when a person first votes because of birth dates or election cycles decreases the likelihood that they will become a regular voter. Yeah, it's called being disinterested. I'm sorry. The sooner you get a kid starting to play basketball, the more likely he'll continue playing basketball and sports throughout the rest of his life. But if he doesn't, he gets into video games, he's probably not going to be a ball player. At 16, and then he continues, he says, at 16, Americans don't have hourly limits imposed on their work and they pay taxes. Their livelihoods are directly impacted by legislation and they should therefore be allowed to vote for their perspectives.
Representatives.
Sorry, they're representatives. You're right. I'm sorry. This really bothers me. At 16, Americans don't have hourly limits imposed upon their work and they pay taxes. No, I'm sorry. 16-year-olds don't pay taxes. Okay. Yes, they incidentally pay the government in sales taxes on their disposable income.
Well, and a payroll.
Yes, if they're one of the few that has a job that you can still get when you're 15 or 16, they will have paid by the time they go to the voting booth some minor payroll tax and FICA and so on and so forth. However, these are all incidental marginalia. When you're talking about a taxpayer paying taxes, the insinuation is that they're paying significant taxes that affect their livelihoods. And I hate the fact that even use the word. Their livelihoods are directly impacted by legislation. They should therefore be allowed to vote for their representatives. Their livelihoods? Okay, this bothers me. As a man that provides for a wife and children, okay, to say that a 16-year-old who's getting extra gas money to hang out with his buddies and buy the latest version of Call of Duty 17, Ghost War Ops, or whatever, he does not have a livelihood. Let's go to the definition of livelihood, okay, out of just basic dictionaries here. Livelihood, noun, a means of securing the necessities of life. I'm sorry, 16-year-olds are not securing their own necessities of life. They're not out of high school, okay? They're driven to class by their parents, unless they're the few that actually get their license on their 16th birthday. Okay. Then they're driven back on class. I mean, half these people are going on their first dates with their parents in the car. All right. They're not, quote, securing the necessities of life. They don't know the first thing about securing the necessities of life. They're arguing over whether Bart Simpson or SpongeBob SquarePants was funnier last night. Okay. Anyway, livelihood. Synonyms. Income, source of income, means of support. No, I'm sorry. If these teenagers are staying on Obamacare until they're 26, okay, I'm not interested in lowering the voting age. I'm interested in raising it until they're actually paying their own bills, okay? The old phrase that if you're not a liberal when you're young, you don't have a heart. And I think it's if before 30, you're not a liberal, you don't have a heart. If after 30, and you're not conservative, you don't have a mind, okay? I think that needs to start happening when you actually pay significant taxes and have a livelihood. But anyway, we're going to continue. Additionally, because of election cycles, there's a level of unfairness that comes with the year a person is born. No, there's not. There's no unfairness with election cycles. They're every 2 years for the House of Representatives, every 4 years for the president, every 6 years for the senator. They've been that way for over 200 years. There's nothing unfair about it. Yet, he tries to make an emotional argument in order to suppress an irrational theory. Senators are on a 6-year cycle and the president is on a 4-year cycle, not to mention local offices. Someone born at the wrong time in a cycle, there's no wrong time in a cycle. There's just time when you're born. But someone born at a wrong time in a cycle would have to wait much longer to cast a ballot for certain offices than someone born at another time. Yeah, you're right. If you were born in 1981 and the first election of Ronald Reagan, not born, but if you turn 18 in 1981 and the election for Reagan was in 1980, you got to wait until 1984 to try and vote him out. That's it. It's called election cycles for a reason. When you go to register your kid at school, they say, what's his birthday? And guess what? If his birthday is before or after the deadline, he's going to be either in the first or the second grade, depending on his age. You want to put him in kindergarten? He's got to be 5. There's nothing unfair about the cycles of saying kids born in this year are in this grade. Just like there's nothing unfair about the cycles in an election saying, okay, senators are elected every 6 years. If we had an election in 2000, can't vote this guy out or vote a new guy in until 2006. Boom, full stop. Cut and dry. Nothing unfair about it. And this is also why it's bothered me, because Andrew Yang up until this point has been so rational. And this is just saying something's not fair. That bothers me. Anyway, while that's true, if the voting age is lowered to 16, it decreases the age at which a person is first allowed to vote for that office, thus allowing them to have a longer period of their life where they feel represented. I'm sorry. As Ben Shapiro says, facts don't care about your feelings. This isn't about feeling represented. It's about being represented and being an actual participant in this process. And the way that you get young people civically engaged is by civically engaging them, not lowering the voting age. And this is so dangerous. And I don't like using the D word too often, but this is dangerous because this has, and I don't even like using the T word too often because it's almost hyperbolic at this time. I mean, at this point, okay? But this is how socialists, tyrants, fascists, all the bad people that we read about in the 20th century, the bloodiest century of world history, this is all how they took over. And we have modern examples just from the past 5 years where this has been an epic failure, okay? And it's so bad, and tyrants can take over because they make emotional arguments, diluting the rational vote with the irrational vote. And teenagers don't vote rationally. I'm sorry. They just don't, because they don't act rationally, okay? The founding fathers specifically said they wanted the rule of wise and engaged men, okay? That's why all the requirements used to be, okay, you had to be a landowner to vote. Now, nowadays, do I think you need to be a landowner in order to vote? No, because we don't have an agrarian society. And also, a guy that rents can be just as civically engaged as a guy that actually owns his house, okay? There might be a little bit more responsibility on behalf of the man that owns his house because he has property taxes and other things that he has to pay. But I don't think you have to own land in order to have a voice in our republic, okay? But you have to have skin in the game. And a 16-year-old doesn't have any skin in the game. All of his or her skin is getting paid for by their parents. Yes, excluding child actors who are millionaires who are supporting their parents and all these other minor exceptions we want to talk about. 99.9% of 16-year-olds in this country do not have skin in the game and would irrationally vote for somebody because their pastor said so. They'd vote for an evangelical Christian because their youth pastor said so. Or they'd vote for Kanye West because he threw a concert for Barack Obama outside of the stadium when there was a polling place on the other side, like happened with Barack Obama in the Midwest. Okay, so let's look at history really fast, okay? Who's the first person that we all can relate to? And I don't like making Nazi examples because everything's compared to Nazis now, including, you know, little old ladies who, you know, are posting to Facebook for the first time in their lives. But let's take a look at some of the propaganda posters from the Nazis way back in the 1930s. In fact, let's go to the Wikipedia article. I want everybody to read the Wikipedia article about the 1936 German parliamentary election and referendum. This is when Adolf Hitler actually officially took power. And he did it legally, okay? Hindenburg didn't want him in. The great hero of World War I didn't want him in, but ultimately was coerced into making him chancellor. And the last time that the German people could actually elect a choice between Hitler and somebody else was in 1933. But by 1936, guess what the last sentence on the second paragraph of the Wikipedia article on the German parliamentary election and referendum is? The removal of the electoral process accounted for much of the large drop in invalid and negative votes. They're referring to the Jews that had just been disallowed from voting, okay? Which fell from over 5 million in 1934 to barely 500,000 in 1936. They disallowed the opposition party from being able to vote. So the nay votes went from being about 5 million to only about 500,000, about 10%, okay? And then the Nazis also lowered the voting age. What do you know? In a large part as to ensure that the electorate was about the same size in 1934. Right now, Democrats are kicking everybody out. Watch the latest videos of Tim Pool. Democrats are kicking everybody out of their party unless they're completely intersectional. And in order to compensate for it, they need to attract non-citizens to their cause, and they need to attract non-voting age people to their cause. I mean, there's a bigger argument about requiring a civics test and upping the voting age to 21 than there is to lowering it to 16, okay? However, the Nazis lowered it, all right? And what happens? They start putting out propaganda. When you take a look at these propaganda posters, it's hilarious. I mean, it is literally like out of Bernie Sanders' platform page. I mean, look, let's check out number 6 here. This poster is for the 5th of March, 1933 Reichstag election. And it says, bill for the Socialist or the Democratic Socialist Party, also known as the Nazi Party, presented by the starving German people. It lists the alleged sins of the socialists and concludes, German people, this is 14 years of serfdom. Never forget it. You now must demand payment. You will receive that payment if you vote for Adolf Hitler. Benjamin Franklin literally said that this republic will fall when the people figure out that they can vote themselves money. Okay. Now, as much as for economic and conservative reasons, I am a huge fan of Andrew Yang's proposed idea of the UBI, the Universal Basic Income, also called the Freedom Dividend. That's different than a handout and a giveaway. Okay. It's a dividend. And this idea that 16-year-olds are entitled, just as as Hitler says, you are entitled to this, demand payment. 16-year-olds, I'm sorry, are not entitled to the privilege of voting in the greatest country in America. Now, not the greatest country in America. Sorry, America, the greatest country in the world. I do apologize. That was kind of stupid. By the way, feel free to jump right in, Cody, if I'm just ranting too much, because I hate rants.
Well, I mean, I would just say that, again, one of the more interesting parts about it, one of the more bizarre things I would say about this whole proposal from Andrew Yang, the reason why it came out, say bizarre, is it came out today. We're recording this right now. It's the 3rd of April. It's kind of late in the game to all of a sudden say I'm going to lower the voting age. Like I said, he obviously, this wasn't one of his policies before the Freedom Dividend, which is 18 plus. It's just weird to me. Like, you would think the first thing that I would vote for when I'm 16 is increasing the Freedom Dividend to include people 16 and older. So that's bizarre. To be honest, I think there still is kind of like a really, I don't want to say a big debate, but like I said, I think the debate that needs to be having is not what's the proper age for someone to be voting at, but I think a more interesting debate to have here is something closer to what, I mean, it's tough, man, because it's hard to say that anyone in this country shouldn't have the right to vote past the legal age. Like, you can pick a number 18 or whatever. It's hard to say that, I know you're 27 or you're 28, but you don't you pick something, you don't pay for your own health care, so you can't vote. You don't have any credit history, so you can't vote. Like, it's just weird to think of limitations on something like that, because the other question is, at
what point do you consider somebody as having, quote, skin in the game? That's my line. At what point do they have skin in the game?
But what is the reason why you have to have, quote unquote, skin in the game to be able to vote? There's people that have, quote unquote, skin in the game, and they're skin in the game since I want to lower the voting age. You know what I mean? Wait, just because.
Did you just ask why you have to have skin in the game in order to vote?
No, why is that good? Why does that mean good things will happen?
Let's just say I go to Germany and I'm visiting and I go to Babelsberg Studios to film a film, and it just happens to be election day. Okay? And they ask me, who do you vote for? And there's, I'm ignorant.
You Citizen,
I say, hey, that guy, he promises free sandwiches.
But Citizen, I think Citizen is a good bar. But beyond Citizen, what should be the limit?
So should 5-year-olds?
Well, like I said, I think 18.
I mean, if Nickelodeon runs an ad.
No, like I said, I think 18 is a fine number. But I'm saying once you get beyond that, it starts to get a little bit tricky as far as like.
Okay, well, tell me this. Then let's flip this argument on its side, because we do want to have a rational argument here. Okay. What is the advantage of allowing 16-year-olds to vote that doesn't immediately have precedent with advantaging a socialist, a totalitarian, or literally a communist?
Well, I would say in this particular instance, the bigger argument for me is like I would need more proof that something bad will happen. Though, because to be frank, if I could have voted when I was 16, guess what I would have voted for? No one. Guess what my friends would have voted for? No one. Guess what policy they would have voted on? None of them.
Yeah, but that's like saying, hey, why don't we lower the drinking age to 17?
Well, no, I mean,
because kids that don't drink won't drink.
But what I'm saying is, to me, it seems a little bit like a kind of like moot platform. It seems like a position that really isn't going to matter. First of all,
but hold on a second. It won't matter.
I wouldn't.
You can start throwing okay, we already have an epidemic in this country of people not thinking before they act or thinking before they vote. Yeah, we literally have people going out and saying, oh, he's racist. Oh, he's racist, then I'm not going to vote for him. Not knowing any of the facts, not knowing any of the figures. We already have a huge problem with tribalism. And who are the most tribalistic people you ever see in your life? Teenagers. They're afraid to stand out.
Okay,
but what my friend said.
As things stand today, going back to 1978, since they've been tracking this stuff, the lowest voting group is 18 to 29. You tell me if we expand that to 16 to 29, anything will change in this country?
No,
right
because
now,
it's going to be
11
easier to
years.
harvest.
But I'm saying is there's an 11-year window, and it's the least represented demographic in elections. So how is making that a 13-year window all of a sudden going to change it to their tip in elections? Right now, they don't vote. Anyone 18 to 29. They're the least active voter base of eligible voters.
Then why do all of the leftist Act Blue organizations in California and other places, why do they all have register or pre-register at 16 votes and brag about all of their ballot harvesting? We're here in the 25th district in Los Angeles, and the local Democrat Party brags about having ballot harvested 4,000 votes just in the Katie Hill election, which is our local congresswoman's election.
But what makes that? What may?
How many 16-year-olds were in there that would just doofily walking along because, oh yeah, that's cool?
Okay, but I like I said, I don't think the idea that more 16-year-olds would vote Democrat than Republican means that it's some travesty if it happens. Like I think it's still kind of more or less a moot point because these people aren't voting.
Should we send 16-year-olds to war?
I would say no. Personally, I would say they shouldn't be voting. But what I'm saying is, I honestly don't view it as a kind of issue that would realistically.
Okay, it's fine that you don't view it as an issue.
But no, I don't think it would impact the country either positively or negatively. I think we're talking like 3% votes.
If you don't think it would, then back that up. If you don't think it would impact us positively or negatively, give me the reason how it would impact us positively.
None. I don't think there is one.
I mean, sorry, I can give you a bunch of negatives.
But what I'm saying is, like I'm totally for leaving the voting age as is. To me, it just seems like when you're talking about radical stuff like, hey, we have millions of jobs that are going to be lost. We need to replace them. Okay. Hey, people are dying across the country. They're overdosing. They're killing themselves. When that is what you're talking about, people need some form of universal basic income. And turn around and say, by the way, the voting age should be 24 months lower. It's like, who cares? I care about the people between the ages of 18 and 56, 65, 70 that don't know where they're going to work. They don't know how they're going to pay their bills. They don't know how they're going to take care of them. I care about that. Not a kid that's a senior in high school wanting to vote for Obama. That's cool. But what I'm saying is I'm more interested in the actual real
I think
policies.
you should need to know what you are even what the process is you're even participating in.
But why?
In. But why?
Yeah, why?
Okay, shouldn't we before we send soldiers off into war? And voting is basically the war of ideas, okay? Before we send soldiers off to war, don't we tell them who the enemy is and why we're fighting this battle?
But that's the opposite of a democratic process. It's here's your gun, you go. There's no democratic process. Soldiers don't vote. You know what, General? Actually,
I'm not trying to.
Me and the boys had a vote, and we're not going to go to Germany.
You just asked me why somebody has to know about the process they're participating in. Like before you put them on an assembly line, don't they have to know what they're building before you can tell them?
Again, opposite of a democratic process. You press that button and you make those T-shirts, or else I fire you. There isn't, you know what, boss? Me and the boys, we got together. We decided we're not going to do that. Like,
well, that's just getting rid of that's just anarchy.
No, but what I'm saying
because that same argument could be placed towards 14-year-olds.
No, but what I'm saying
why not make it 14?
But no, my larger point is, let's say there's 8 people and you're voting on what restaurant to go to. You've never been to this restaurant and you don't know much about it, and you vote for it.
Like, well, should that person just say, I'm ambivalent, I don't know this restaurant?
Themselves? I recuse myself because I've never been at these restaurants personally.
I would love it if half these idiots that voted for these other idiots that are running for office recuse themselves. Yes, sure. I really would love that.
But what I mean though is like it's a tough question because I think ultimately restricting people's right to vote is bad. Now, I don't think that
it's not the right to vote. There's plenty of rights you don't have until you're 18.
Well, hold up,
he wants to restrict owning a gun. Like, we could make the exact same arguments and say, well, why shouldn't gun ownership go down to 18? It's a constitutional right. Well, everybody should have the vote to it. And Democrats go batshit crazy.
Okay, but like, forget about Democrat or Republican. I, for one, would be fine with lowering the legal age for owning a firearm. I think it's a really important thing in this country. I'd be fine with that. Like,
well, if you're emotionally honest enough and intellectually honest enough to say that I'm fine with lowering the gun voting, well, fine. Yeah. If you want to tie those two together, then to me that's at least intellectually honest.
No, but like I said, it's just I think this is one of those things, one of those issues. Like I said, that to be honest, we're probably talking about 20% of kids 16 to 17 that are voting.
Okay. Well, look, I want to skip ahead really fast before we finish here to show a modern example that only happened in 2013. And it's in Argentina. There's 16 countries right now that have lowered the voting age from 18 to 16. And some of them, it's only partial. Like in Germany, it's only in certain municipalities and only for local elections. In fact, we'll just burn through the list really fast of countries that allow voting at the age of 16. You got Bosnia, Brazil, Cuba, Ecuador, Estonia, Germany, Luxembourg, Malta, Nicaragua, and Scotland. Okay.
As well as Argentina and Austria.
Yes, I'm sorry. And I lived in Argentina for 2 years. And I experienced 2 elections in Argentina. And let me tell you firsthand exactly how this goes. Okay. Now, before we talk about it, let's read this BBC article written November 1st in 2012. Okay. From BBC News, Argentina's Congress has approved a law to lower the voting age to 16 in a move that will take effect for key midterm elections next year. Whose key midterm elections? Let's read the first paragraph. President Cristina Fernandez has courted the youth vote, and critics say the change is designed to boost her party's chances in the 2013 polls. Oh, chances of what? Supporters of the move say it will widen political participation. Oh, chances of participation. That's good. Oh, but wait. Voting is obligatory in Argentina for people ages 18 to 70, but will be optional for those 16 to 17. So why would we want to extend this privilege? Why would we want to do it? Well, because more than 1 million 16 to 17-year-olds would be eligible to vote, and critics say that this will what? This will what? Boost her party's chances of victory in the next upcoming election. This sounds a lot like Harry Reid introducing the nuclear option into Senate, thus making it so we could never go back. Argentina now is stuck in this horrible cycle where they're constantly electing the same populist, charismatic leaders, the caudillos, they called them, that they designed their republic to fight against. The founding fathers designed our constitutional republic so we would not be like the other countries, like France, that would have these big, charismatic Napoleon Bonapartes who would create these large empires and then crash and burn through betrayal and through all kinds of sordid affairs, and then a new one would rise and would graze it. I mean, it's this horrible political cycle where the revolutionaries become the tyrants and they get kicked out by the new revolutionaries, and there's bloody revolution after bloody revolution. Even Barack Obama, when he when he transferred his presidential power to Donald Trump, says the greatest thing about the Constitution is that it ensures a peaceful transition of power. Okay? Argentina is stuck in a horrible, horrible cycle of electing nothing but charismatic socialists who lie to them. And guess where Cristina Fernandez has gone? Where did Cristina Fernandez end up less than 5 years after lowering the voting age to 16 in Argentina, Cody?
Well, I believe a courtroom would be the most accurate thing, but she is currently facing a trial, I believe, over bribery and corruption.
Yeah. So, I'm sorry. Okay, France has had like almost 10, they've had like 14 constitutions.
Yeah, they got a lot of practice.
Yeah, since we drafted our first one. And one of the things that we did was we said in order to participate in elections, you have to have skin in the game. Okay? This takes skin out of the game and just makes us victims to emotional reactions from large swaths of people. And now they're getting younger and younger and younger. So what good is wisdom in a republic where it just gets canceled out by the teenager next door who got a tweet from somebody he followed saying, vote for me? That make sense?
Yeah, but I mean, like I said, I don't agree that the 16 to 18 voter base would be the most powerful voter base in the country if they were given. I think.
Okay, would you agree that this seems like a sellout?
I do agree that this does sound like someone pandering to the DNC and trying to get closer into the party. Because, like I said, it's just, dude, realistically, we're talking probably less than 20% of those people are going to vote, and it doesn't matter which direction they vote. It just, to me, feels almost statistically insignificant, which is another reason why I'm kind of confused by it. Like that, Andrew Yang himself has acknowledged that 18 is a pretty important age because that's when you get the freedom dividend. Like I said, I would have to imagine the first thing that the 16 to 17 demographic would vote for is to lower the age of the freedom dividend to 60. You know what I mean? So that's bizarre. But ultimately, like I said, it just, to me, I still need to see more data that in the United States of America, not Argentina or Nazi Germany, that lowering the voting age would have any kind of negative impact in our especially he's proposing strictly federal, local, and state would remain up to the states or the municipality.
How convenient that the most internet meme-based candidate of the digital revolution wants the age lowered to 16.
I mean, like I said, I don't think that tips an election. I don't think he goes from not having a chance to winning because he harnessed the ultra powerful, influential 16 to 17 Democrat. You know what I mean? Like, dude, trying to get more than 13% of those kids to vote is enough of a challenge, much less them tipping an election.
Okay. I challenge any viewer out there, please. Give me, we already know why the Democrats would love this, because they're already loving this in California and pushing for it in California and organizing ballot harvesting schemes upon the idea that you can register 16-year-olds to vote. So I'm already familiar with the leftist reasons why you would want to lower the voting age to 16. I have a challenge for any viewer out there. If you can tell me in the comments how there's a conservative reason, a bipartisan reason to lower the voting age to 16, we will make a response video just to that. This is Problem Solver Politics.